Good morning. Uh, I don't know about you, but I've been busy thinking. And thinking leads to thinking about thinking. So I've been thinking about thinking. And one of the things I've been thinking about is the difference between experiential and experimental. It's another one of my dichotomies. And after just over 71 years of experience, I'm pretty far along in my experiment. Experimenting with experience. If that makes any sense at all, and I'm hoping that it does, because it's been working for me. So let's come back to the I. I've talked a lot about I, me, my. Who's I, me, my? And told a story about the Korean Zen monk, the elderly Korean Zen monk, that would say to any answer, brief, elongated, academic, secular, spiritual. Did I leave any ground uncharted? But he would say, I hit you with this stick, not I. Because the only answer is don't know. Hit you with the stick. In the old Zen tradition, he carried his staff. And I'm looking around for mine. I got a cane, but I want to extend it to a staff. Anyway, that's an aside. And that means a trip to the other side of the island where they have a wood carving village that I bought my cane in the first place. But a staff. A staff in the true wizard tradition. But this experiential, and today I'm calling this lesson, this sharing. If there's a lesson to be learned, sometimes I misspeak. If there's a lesson to be learned, it's that teaching is perhaps too loaded of a term. Sharing what comes from within, from myself. What have I been working on? So this experiential being is aimed at, is addressing, is attempting to share what I'm direct experience of being. Again, thank you, Adyashanti, because those are your words. Direct experience of being. And his words always find a place in my heart that always resonate with me, because he is several years ahead in the game. The game of seeing what's so, of being what's so. on all levels that you could think of. His direct experience of being took place more than 22 years ago. I remember when I had an opportunity to see him and to be in his presence at the University of Hawaii at the East West Center in the 70s. Does the math add up? No. I'm off by 20 years. In 1996, I believe, he had already had his awakening experience and began his teaching, his abiding awakening in his words. He had a non-abiding previously, but his abiding. And mine didn't take place, although I did have a non-abiding awakening over the course of maybe 30 years. Different degrees, different levels, different periods of impact and import. Some stuck with me longer than others, but my abiding experience wasn't until about 6 years ago. It's getting longer. Wow. No, 6 years. Just celebrating 16 years. 6 years. Last May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, as it took its course over these 3 days. And we asked this question, like my Zen monk friend, and it was revisited by Adyashanti. Who is this I? Just I. If you use just I, you have some kind of cerebral, emotional, intellectual response. You have an idea generated by just one word, I. An idea and a reaction. And where did that come from? And the reaction is spontaneous. It's before you have an opportunity to think. And this is what many before me have called direct experience of being. And I would like to make it a little more inclusive and say direct experience of becoming. Because this is what life is, after all, isn't it? It's becoming. Has a beginning, middle, and end on one level of understanding and perception. And on another level, it has an endless cycle of becoming. Being in the moment, becoming in the accumulation of moments. And even as I'm speaking to you now, this is representing that accumulation of moments to get me from there to here, from where I was 10 minutes ago to where I am now. And the interesting thing is, physically, one could say that I'm still in the same place. But on all the other levels, cognitively, emotionally, physically, moments have passed. Moments have accumulated. And as I've learned to pay more attention, those moments represent opportunity for learning, for growing. Every moment represents that. And it's just a matter of slowing down, assigning the monkey mind to where it belongs for entertainment purposes only, for the noise that it generates, for the companionship that it represents. That noisy monkey mind is there, always there. And it becomes, what becomes important is your relationship to this monkey mind. Thoughts, cognitive thinking. It's not all monkey business, but for all intents and purposes, it's hard to really delineate from useful thought and not so useful. It's all a matter of degrees, isn't it? This sphere of influence. So the monkey mind is a constant companion, as I said earlier, relegated to where it belongs, in the realms of for entertainment only. It is entertaining, and not without its uses. Maybe the mind can be looked at as pure mind, compromised mind, compromised by too much identification, too much ego, too much identification, and monkey mind. There's the 3 levels. And I've learned that the superior mind, which mind is mind, but the apparently superior mind is useful for sorting, filing, storing. It's useful for coming up with questions. It's useful for assigning relevancy, efficacy to these questions. But never can an answer come from this mind. So to recognize the monkey mind, the lowest level of that chatter, that I'm not sure about you, but that chatter is always there. And what I've learned to do is, instead of trying to shut it off, because 30 years of attempting to shut the monkey mind never came to a satisfactory result. It's always there. So then it began, what's my relationship to this monkey mind? What's my relationship to the middle mind, the mind compromised by ego, as well as what I see as the 3rd level of the mind, which has removed most of the inklings of egoic rationalization, egoic thought, egoic identification. And it's on this level that intellectually, the mind has a purpose. And I assign it the task of sorting questions. And also with sorting, filing, and storing. And also it can search and share it can, since it constructed this system of storage, filing, and sorting, since it exists, since it created this is the task I assigned to it, to keep it busy and keep it happy. It was always my mind was always happy to attempt to please, to do a job. It was, if I could use the word gleeful, it gleefully accepted my assignment of chores. Kind of like a librarian on steroids. Electronic library, because it's all filed, sorted, filed, and stored in its almost infinite capacity. More megabytes than we can count, most likely. But I see it. I see this process. I visualize this process in a much more arcane, historic lens. I see a little old man. He's got some kind of visor and glasses and a sliding ladder that just slides on this myriad of books. Physically see books. And I remember, I don't know if I shared my experience in the 3 days of awakening, the abiding awakening that I experienced 6 years ago. But part of it was in the library in Alexandria, where bookcases, books, tall bookshelves would come forward from, as my peripheral vision, something that's improved since awakening, maybe from this very experience. Peripheral 320, 330 degrees peripheral vision. Not 360, but I do have a fourth eye that takes care of that. But digress. This sources of information, everything that has been, could been, will be known is in this library. And the books spilled out, the books, and I immediately absorbed every word, every picture, every thought, in every volume. And this went on for hours and hours and hours, this falling of books. And again, this was my experience of being exposed to the body of knowledge. The body of, ultimately, the body of wisdom, because contain the hierarchy, thought, knowledge, and wisdom. Not every book is full of wisdom, is it? Not every book is even full of thoughts, definitely created with words. Words that serve different purposes. The author of each had a different intent. So this absorbing of information. And the chore fell on this little old man who had to sort, file, and store. So it's a resource. And this is a resource of the, what I was calling the third level of the mind. Now the monkey mind, the first level of mind, needs to be, I said entertainment purposes only. But since it can't be shut down, it can be ignored, it can be almost laughed at. The feeble attempts are pretty transparent. The feeble attempts of the middle mind, the ego-based mind, uses this monkey mind as a tool, almost a weapon of last resort, a weapon of survival. So all of this has been sort of to share what one word, and even my finger, I. What's contained within this I? What is your reaction? And this is your experience of being, the spontaneous reaction, not the reaction that comes through any of the three minds. Your initial response. And the question you have to ask is, where did this come from? Where did this insight, where did this understanding, this comprehension come from? It's faster, the source was faster than the mind, so the mind has to be ignored once again. This sense of being contained in this I. I listen. Many, I've heard I am, and I am that I am. I am that I am is kind of a summary of the whole story. I am is kind of a declaration of existence. So, I am that I am, kind of the whole story. I am is your participation, your acknowledgement of your participation in what is. The simple I is inclusive. And it's intuitively gifted and understood. It's transcended the world of words. It's transcended the world of question. So, words and question, tools of the mind, are ignored. Transcended is a nice word. But, again, this I, the simplicity is encapsulate all the complexities, inclusive. And it's spontaneously gifted to the receptive being. Much like a radio receiver, a shortwave radio receiver, we have to learn to open up to channels, to information that's broadcasted. And I want to go back because I'm talking about this receptive receiver. And a simple radio with a dial came to mind. This is my experience of what I was gifted by my teacher. Teacher can take you to the edge and encourage you to jump, even command you to jump off the precipice into the unknown abyss. He, she, gotta be inclusive. He or she leads by example. They're living the life. And the third thing is probably more specific, but each of us will experience everything in our own way, and we'll put it back we'll experience it in the images that we're able to. And I remember just after the precipice, just in this process, who knows, it's hard to sort. But I could almost physically see my teacher tuning a dial. I'm the radio, and my image is dated, you know? I remember when radios had a dial. And to get the frequency correct. So there's another gift. And I'm sure that this can be done without a teacher. But the process would be more convoluted, wouldn't it? It's a lot more effort. But this was done for me. Laser clarity, locked on the station. And it would do me absolutely no constructive good unless almost simultaneously, I don't know, did he tune the dial and then I jump? Or did I jump and then he tuned the dial? Who knows? Who cares? But this process occurred seemingly simultaneously. But conquering of fear, the fear of the known and the unknown. And then, of course, the necessary surrender. Surrender to que sera, sera, in the words of an old Doris Day song that I loved as a youth. What will be, will be. This is surrender. I can't think of a better way to share what surrender includes. Surrender. And you can surrender until you've learned to ignore, dismiss, grow beyond any fear. It's the fearlessness. And you take the leap. Well, before any of this happens, my teacher was somewhere else doing something for somebody else because his job was done with me, done for me, we were done. He took me to where he could. He showed me what he could show me. And it took me a couple years to really understand the import that when this relationship essentially ended, because you have to stand on your own 2 feet. You have to proceed through abolishment of fear. Understanding first. You can't abolish fear until you understand that there's nothing to fear. And this comes with the inclusiveness of life. The banishment of separation and division. When you can see the unification that we're all, this I is everything. And the identification, the understanding on this deep, intuitive level that includes the gut, your emotion, your physical, and your mental bodies all combine to embrace this liberation and the falsity, from the falsity that of fear. Then surrender. Surrender to what is. that leap. And it's only with 2020 hindsight, in review, I can look back and see that my teacher was long gone by the time I was plunging into the abyss. Fearlessly trusting. So there's a process. And I can only speak to how I remember my process, the language, the words that I've used to attempt to share. So this accumulation of knowledge, my results in the surety, the certainty in an uncertain world that I will know what I need to know when I need to know it. Otherwise, let go. There's no desperate searching. I'm not calling on my librarian who he's on his break until such time that I need to know. And this need to know doesn't arise from me. It arises in the moment. If I need to know it in the moment, I will know it. If I don't need to know it in the moment, at least temporarily, I can rest assured that it's there. This accumulation of all knowledge. This is the I. This direct experience of being is awakening, isn't it? It's another way to attempt to encapsulate, to inclusively include this beautiful experience. I encourage you to experiment. I encourage you to accumulate that, what we call experience. Experiential, experimental. Both of them are necessary in your search. But in simplicity is the understanding that the simplicity of I wish I could hide my thumb. The simplicity of I is inclusive, and this direct experience is how you know